now in year number 4. It's a Yank on the Footy with Craig Wessels. Let's all sit back and enjoy a chat about the greatest game on the face of the earth. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 286 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels, coming to you from Sandusky, Ohio. I am thrilled that you're listening. In this episode, I'm going to be chatting with Dan Bevan and Jack Vantage about their new screenplay that they have written. It's a footy-related screenplay, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you. Some great stories. I'm just going to let you know right now, Dan tells a story in this interview that, quite frankly, left me with goosebumps. It was something that I needed to hear at that time, and I'm so glad that he shared it with me and has allowed me to share this also then with you. Now, before we dive in, folks, our club of the episode are the Deer Park Lions of the Essendon District Football League. Now, the Lions were established way back in 1925, and this weekend at Windy Hill, the Lions will be facing off against West Coburg for the premiership in the Rookie Me Division 1. Now, West Coburg has run through their entire fixture with a record of 18 wins and no losses, while the Lions finished in second place on the ladder with a record of 14-4. They dropped 2 extraordinarily close games to West Coburg this year. I think by a total of 9 points, they lost 2 games during the home and away season. I want to wish Deer Park the absolute best as they make their run this Saturday for a premiership. And on the 23rd, coming up the following Saturday, the club's holding their annual presentation night at the Deer Park Club. Hopefully you've gotten your tickets for that already. I believe the deadline was the 8th, but hope everybody has a fabulous time with that. And here's to hoping that they have a whole lot more to be celebrating after this Saturday. And I do want to give a big shout out to Peter Lausch, for making my job very easy this week in terms of selecting this week's Club of the Episode. He had placed a post up on social media about them, and I love being able to promote clubs that are playing grand finals this time of year. And Peter, thanks so very much, man, for sharing that information, because like I said, it made my job really, really easy. Now, before we jump into the podcast and the interview, I did want to let everybody know that I've picked up a handful of stickers for the podcast, and I'd love to get one in your hands. Of course, you can go to my Redbubble store page, which you can find on my website at yankonthefooty.com, and pick up all the stickers and T-shirts, hoodies, and that sort of thing that you would want. But if you're one of the first, I believe I picked up 8 of them. If you're one of the first 8 people to leave me a great 5-star review over on my website at yankonthefooty.com, and then drop me a message on the website or by email to yankonthefooty@gmail.com with your mailing address, I will get one of those out to you very soon. You know, if you enjoy the show, I do hope you'll consider leaving a review, even if you happen to be number 9 there, because it's a great way to promote the show. Again, I can't go knocking on doors. I can't, show up on a weekly basis at a local footy club promoting it. Word of mouth is a huge help. And those of you who have enjoyed the show, I truly, truly thank you for that. And I have to tell you, I've had a significant spike, and I'm pleasantly surprised, in viewership or listenership, if you will, over on my YouTube channel. And I had about 100 episodes up there, but I had been rather neglectful in getting that updated. But somehow I managed to trigger the algorithm on YouTube here recently and have almost tripled the number of subscribers that I have on there. And over the last couple of days, while this weekend was going on, of course, I watched the Cleveland Browns win their game this weekend, and it's always a great weekend when the Browns win and the Steelers lose. But I also uploaded another 18 or 19 interviews that I've done in the past, and I have a number of other ones that I'm working on getting uploaded as well. And they run the gamut, to former players, to people who've been involved with clubs and have had family members involved with their club of choice going back to 1902 and before, to one episode which is my most memorable game. It's the game that turned me into a supporter for the club that I support now. So hopefully you'll check out those over on YouTube. And again, it's the audio of the podcast that you're listening to now. But if you're over on YouTube, I thank you. I thank you for the wonderful comments. Many of you have reached out. It's been wonderful. And I'm going to do a better job of getting the episodes up there as they come out, and I'm going to backfill a lot of the interviews. I don't know if I'm going to be putting up the week-to-week episodes where we discuss the games that were going on in round 17 from 2022 or round 4 from 2023. Those kind of have a shelf life. Okay, sure, you can go back and listen to the episodes and find out how bad I did at tipping games. I tipped North Melbourne way too many times in 2023, and look what that got me. But, I want to thank all of you who have checked out my YouTube page, and it's been awesome. And again, I'm still under 100 subscribers overall. So if you want to subscribe over there, that would be awesome as well. But I never thought I would get as far along as I have. So those of you who are over there who are checking it out, I thank you. I truly appreciate it. Share it with your friends, okay? And also check out the podcast over on my website as well if you've not been over to the website, because all the episodes are listed there. So if there's something you haven't heard yet, I've got interviews with legendary players, Kate Roffey, the team president from the D's, just an absolutely wonderful, wonderful human being there. So let's go ahead and jump into my chat with Dan and Jack, and we'll come back and close it out after that. And I think you're really going to enjoy this one, especially if you're a movie buff. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to be joined by my guests. Thought I was going to have one, but we actually have two joining us tonight, which is awesome. My first guest is Jack Bevan. He is a procurement officer with an energy company. He has another side gig we're going to talk about in a moment, as does my other guest, Dan Bevan. He's a school teacher, also a podcaster. And these two gentlemen have a new screenplay that they have been working on. And Dan reached out to me last week, thinking that this would be a good conduit to talk about the screenplay. And I think it's a wonderful story. I read through what he shared with me today, and I'm really interested to learn more about it and learn how this came about. So, Jack, Dan, I won't make the same John Mellencamp reference that I made before, even though I made it again in a different way. Sounds like one of his songs. This is a little podcast about Jack and Dan. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that song from him before or not. Maybe too old of a song for you, but you'll have to look it up now. Welcome aboard, guys.
You there, Craig?
I am here. We are still recording. So
okay.
All right, guys. Dan, you reached out to me earlier this week or late last week with an interesting story. You reached out to me kind of out of the blue. So I did not know that you were working on this, but when you shared what you were working on, I thought, wow, this is a fascinating story. And I love telling fascinating stories or sharing fascinating stories here. So the two of you are working on, and I don't know if it's completed yet, but it sounds like it's well on its way. You're working on a screenplay. So why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit about this, and then we'll talk about how it came about and what the inspiration was for this.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you my little logline and synopsis if you like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So our logline is: an American college basketball player overlooked in the NBA draft travels down under to try his hand at the game of Australian rules football. And our little synopsis is: Major Robinson made the choice to play basketball over American football, much to the dismay of his NFL Hall of Fame father. After missing out on the NBA draft, he's contacted by a scout at the AFL Combine Camp, who offers him a chance to try his hand at the game of Aussie rules footy. Travelling to Melbourne, Australia, he's put on display for the 18 teams in the AFL. Major's basketball skills come in handy. He's evasive, has a huge vertical leap, and is a great catch of the egg-shaped ball. However, due to his lack of kicking skills, he's not selected by any of the clubs. One of the scouts sees potential in him and contacts an old acquaintance at a country league football team to give him a chance to learn the game at a lower level. Major accepts this invitation and heads to a small country town in the middle of the Aussie bush called Ngambie. There you go.
Which I did look up, and that is actually a real town, because I did not know if you were working with fictitious towns or not, but that one actually does exist. It's south of, I think it's pronounced Echuca.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well done.
There, that's my geography degree paying off for me right there. So yeah, it sounds like a fascinating story. You sent me a longer kind of breakdown of what's going to be going on in the story, and I don't want to delve too much into that because I don't know how much you want that to be out in public, because you want to get this. I think the goal is to get this thing actually created. Correct?
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
we can talk about aspects of it, I guess, but you don't want to give away the ending of a story, I guess.
Right, right. Yeah, it's well, unless it's, something that's been out for 20 or 30 years and you figure, yeah, not much of a spoiler. You know, as we
Well,
looked at that list of movies, you'll notice there are very few of those like Marvel and DC movies in that list. It's not my
I,
genre of films, and I actually joked with my kids a few years ago when the Avengers Endgame movie came out. And I actually wrote I'd never seen any of those films, but I wrote a quote unquote review of the film the day before it was released. And I shared it with the kids, and they all went and watched it, and they were like, damn, you were pretty close to being right. And I had no clue who any of the characters were or anything like that. But so I guess first of all, how did the two of you meet?
through my American partner, actually. We were every year we go camping up at the river near the Goulburn River, which actually runs into the Ngambie Lake of all places. And this guy turned up in a footy jumper, and I was in my footy jumper. We were the only two blokes in footy jumpers, and he had a footy, and he's like, "Want to have a kick?" And we ended up having a bit of a play up there and crashing around in the bush, and yeah, it just became good mates. What was your
Okay.
perspective on that, Jack?
Yeah, the exact same. It was awesome because a lot of those boys we go camping with are footy fans, but they don't play. And I'd known Chelsea, who Chelsea brought Dan along to the bush, and yeah, it was good to. I brought a footy, but usually I'm just kicking it to myself, and so I had someone to kick it with. And yeah, obviously very very big fan of the game, very knowledgeable bloke, and we had a few big nights there. I think big nights break the ice, and yeah, been good friends since.
Okay. Even though, as we have the cameras turned off right now, hoping that we don't get as many glitches in this recording tonight. But even though one of you is wearing a Cat's Guernsey and the other one's wearing a Hawthorne ski cap, the two of you were able to have a kick to kick without
It's one of the
it's
best things
amazing.
about our game, Craig, is that we've got these rivalries that are pretty big. So Hawthorn generally do hate the Cats and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa, but we can go to a game and sit side by side, and it's nothing like, I guess, English football where they get segregated and separated and fights break out and all the rest of it. We can sort of leave that on the pitch and shake hands after and have a beer after the game as well.
There you go. There you go. That sounds completely unlike many of the seating areas in the NFL, where unfortunately far too many videos show up on social media regaling the drunken exploits of far too many people here in the U.S. But so you met on a camping trip, and you kind of kept in touch. But where did the idea then? Where Dan, you're a school teacher and you're working in a capacity as a purchasing clerk with a major company. Where did the whole idea of doing a screenplay come about? So how did the two of you decide or catch the bug to want to do something like that?
Well, I guess it's the initial idea started with me. I was really disappointed. I went to the cinemas and I watched an Australian film, not to rag on Australian cinema because I love Australian cinema, but this particular film, I won't mention its title. I watched it. It was about Australian rules football, and it was pretty much the worst film that I'd ever seen made about Australian footy. We
Which
don't have many.
I'm going to guess people can probably narrow it down by you not naming the name because, as you said, there's probably not a lot of them that have been created about the game.
There's five.
Well, there you go. So they got a 20% chance of being right.
They do. They do. The thing that upset me about it the most is that they'd chosen actors to be in the film that had absolutely no idea how to play football. And it was so obvious to watch them fumble the ball and dodge around players where, if it was a real game of footy, they just would have got taken out.
Uh-huh.
If I was telling Jack just before, actually, that one of the famous scenes from the movie is when the big full forward takes a mark and he goes back to kick it, and it's a front on angle of it, and he drops the ball like it's a potato. It goes crazy off his foot, and then it cuts to behind him, and the ball goes perfectly straight. And that just really annoyed me as a person who'd played, and Jack as well. We both played over 300 games between us of country league footy. It was
Wow.
just really upsetting to watch something and go, oh, this could have been so much better. Like I really was disappointed with it. So that initial spark, I just went, you know what? I'm going to write one day I'll write a script about Australian rules football, and that's sort of how the idea was born.
Well, this sounds a little bit like, pick one of them, and I've not watched any of them, but I've seen people kind of make fun of them on YouTube. This sounds like any one of the films that Steven Seagal has made over the last 15 to 20 years, where he just kind of sits in one spot and all of the acting takes place around him, but he never moves. It kind of sounds a little bit like that.
It is. What do you think of Steven Seagal, Jack?
I like Steven Seagal.
I knew you would.
Well, let's be honest. It's been a few years since Hard to Kill and things like that have come out. I think if Steven Seagal tried to lift his leg, up at an angle or in front of him as high as he used to, we're going to be calling an orthopedic surgeon to do some sort of a bone replacement of some sort for him. But so you said you both played over 300 games of country footy. Now, have you compared notes? Were you guys in a general area where you might have crossed paths with one another and played against one another?
Jack was more metro than I was. He played sort of in the Metro League in Melbourne, whereas I was in full country league footy. Ngambia is actually the second footy club that I played for, hence why I set the story there.
Okay. So Jack, who'd you play with, if I may ask?
Yeah, I'm still playing footy. I'm playing over 35s at the moment with the Oakley Crushers. So they're in VAFA. Our ones just got through to the grand final. And so we'll be going up a division to Premier C. So the VAFA is the Victorian Amateur Football Association. Very proud district club. And yeah, still running around there. I don't think I'm going to give it away until my body gives way, and it's still able to chug along despite all my many injuries across the years. So yeah, I played this year and we'll be playing next year.
Now you said Oakley as in Oakleigh?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm looking. I have a list that I printed out a couple of years ago from Wikipedia that had, at least at that point in time, it had all of the local footy clubs all across Australia. Because every episode I do a shout out to a local club at the start of the episode. And you said you were in the VAFA?
VAFA, Oakley Crushers with a K.
Okay, because is that the same association as Ivanhoe Assumption?
Yes, we do play Ivanhoe. We play a lot of schoolboy sides. But yeah, there's 7 divisions, and it works kind of like soccer in that the top 2 go up and the bottom 2 go down. And so yeah, we're going up from Divi 1 to Premier C next year.
Because Ivanhoe is one of the clubs that I have featured as one of the clubs of the episode on the podcast, because I highlight them as I go along, and I try to rotate between states and that type of thing. So, and rotate, through different leagues as well. So, I mean, I've done that now for about 150 episodes, and it's fun to be able to reach out to those clubs and say, hey, I gave your club a shout out, and I've actually had a couple of instances where there was one club in the Northern Territories who I ended up with a really good relationship with, ended up getting interviewed on the ABC radio up in Darwin as a result of this. And, they sent me a club polo shirt and that sort of thing, which I wear to school all the time. And it's actually, I'm actually in the Tracy Village Razorbacks polo shirt in our school yearbook for last year. So, so it's and I've had a couple clubs that have done that and have sent those on, because they were like, wow, you're there and you gave us a shout out. And it's I had a club in WA that just the first 13 years of their existence, they won a total of 2 games. They came around in 2008. They just won a premiership in their league this past weekend, and they'd won 2 games in the first 13 years that they existed.
Oh, what an awesome comeback story.
Yeah. So you're playing, you're paying Metro, Dan, you're playing, about what I say, it was like 150 kilometers, I think, or something like that, north of Melbourne.
Central Victoria.
Yeah. yeah, 122 kilometers north of Melbourne, yeah, away from Melbourne, closer to Shepparton by far. But so you met on vacation. Did you end up going on vacation again and coordinate with one another to go on vacation together again, or how did the relationship with the two of you, grow enough to where you thought, okay, we both want to work on something like this?
All right, I'm gonna have to give you the PG version of some of these stories.
You know what? Hey, you know what? My preview episode the other day, I dropped an F-bomb on it. You feel free to use whatever version you want, okay?
Are you sure?
I have no I mark up my episodes explicit if they're explicit. So you
Okay.
use whatever language you want to use. I was in the United States Navy. We had to take classes on how to learn to swear properly. So I am completely comfortable with whatever the fuck you want to say. How's that? I went ahead and initiated it.
It's not about the swearing, I don't think, Craig.
Uh-oh.
No, it'd be about the types of adventures we're getting ourselves into. But
okay, let me ask you this question then. I am not my only experience with the legal system in Australia is watching the TV series Rake. So
God.
So
no.
I don't know do they have something called the statute of limitations? So if there's something that you've done that you can no longer get in trouble for it if you actually admit to it on a podcast.
I don't think that exists, but
okay,
we can run with the
okay.
the PG / we might get to the MA version.
Whatever you want to use though, that's fine.
Yeah. So we've probably been hanging out a few times here and there, past camping and having little Halloween parties and stuff, because obviously with an American partner, Halloween's a big deal. Had lots of chats about films and cinema, and when you connect with someone, you usually end up liking the same thing. And we just started going back and forth with movies that we liked. I actually did something pretty horrible to Jack, and I spoiled the last James Bond film for him, which I feel bad about, Jack.
Jack, Jack, you knew ahead of time that Daniel Craig was not coming back and that he died? Uh-oh. Uh-oh, if you haven't watched it yet, I'm sorry, it came out a few years ago.
The benefit of him spoiling it was he promised to buy me a ticket to the movie, and we all actually ended up going to see it. So he told me it was an absolute piece of garbage, and at the end of it, I actually didn't mind it. But I suppose that's the benefit of low expectations.
I just didn't like that they killed James Bond. I was pretty sad about it.
Well, they were, and I have all of the Bond films, and that's the only one I paid full price for. The other ones I bought it at discount shops or op shops, if you will. Paying about $3 a piece for them. But
do you have On Her Majesty? Do you have On Her Majesty's Secret Service?
I absolutely do. Yes, I absolutely.
So George Lazenby is one of the actors that we've pegged for one of the roles in the film.
Really? Yeah, because and you know what? I know people give him a hard time, and I guess he, from what I've read about him, he had a pretty serious issue with alcohol when he was, because he was a model. He was not an actor.
Correct.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I thought he did a decent job. As he was not Sean Connery, but I think there could be a case made that maybe he might have been a better Bond than Roger Moore in a couple of the films, and you might be able to make an argument that he was a better Bond than Timothy Dalton.
It's funny because one of the things that I said to Jack to try and sort of smooth over the fact that I'd ruined the last Bond film for him was I tried to give him a DVD of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and he goes, "Mate, I don't have a DVD player anymore."
Oh man, I have one that I keep unplugged. That I have one that I have a Blu-ray player that I don't have plugged in because just in case the EMP attack happens, I can maybe still find a generator and then still be able to watch the DVDs then even afterwards. But I'm a bit of a Bond fan. I love classic films as well. It's as I was telling Dan, I teach a course that is called Contemporary History Through Film, and I'll share with you a list of the films that we watch in the class. I mean, we start out with we basically look at how movies portrayed like U.S. history after World War II, and what did they get right, what did they get wrong. We look at a lot of the key moments throughout the latter half of the 20th and into the 21st century, and and the kids, the kids will, write, short responses to, some of the questions that I have to just kind of get them to think about what the film is telling us. Because we're going to be watching here in a couple of weeks, we're going to be watching Dr. Strangelove when we get into the Cold War.
Well,
And inevitably, we spend a day talking about character development, how all of the characters in that film, every one of their names relate back to sex. And, have you seen Dr. Strangelove before?
Yeah, it was part of university course.
Okay.
I did. We had to see film, yeah.
Yeah, but the opening scene of the film, you see one plane refueling with another. So I mean, Kubrick is just absolutely, putting it right in your face. This is what this film is about,
Yeah.
and of course, these kids, and these are kids who are, anywhere between 14 and 18 years old. Inevitably, when we get done watching Dr. Strangelove, the looks on their faces are consistently like a collective, what the hell did I just watch? But do you know that the ending, that it did not end the way it was supposed to end? Do you know the story of the actual ending?
No.
Yeah, that film, and this is crazy.
Where he's riding the bomb through the air.
Well, yeah, he did that. That was supposed to happen, but all of the explosions happening at the end, where Dr. Strangelove, says, I've got, I can walk, and then all the bombs go off. That is not how the film was supposed to end.
Okay.
That is not how it was supposed to end. And they've never released the footage of what was happening at the end, but I've seen still images of it, because Kubrick was trying to portray just how ridiculous the idea of nuclear war was. And if you go back and you look at that film again, as they're all coming in, there was that whole table filled with all the food. And on that table, there were close to like 300 pies on that table. And the film was supposed to end like one of those pie fight scenes from a Three Stooges short.
Yep.
And there was a scene where the president, Peter Sellers' character, one of the characters he played, got hit in the face with a pie. And George C. Scott shouts out, "Oh my, our young president struck down in the prime of his life." Now, that gets even crazier when you realize that they were screening Dr. Strangelove. They were doing a test screening of Dr. Strangelove on November the 22nd, 1963. I don't know if you know the significance of that day. That was the day John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
So I had a feeling it might be something like that.
Kennedy's assassinated on the day that they're screening a movie where the character, the president character, gets hit in the pie, and the general in the war room says, "Oh no, our young president struck down in the prime of his life." And they knew right away, oh shit, that cannot be the ending to this film anymore.
Of course. No.
So they had to go back and reshoot that. So, and also you go back and I don't know if you happen to have that on DVD or not, but you go back and you watch Slim Pickens, the pilot of the plane, when he's reading through the list of stuff that's in their survival pack, and he goes through this whole list of things that are in there, the gum and the prophylactics and the gold and the stocking or the nylons and this and that and the Russian phrase book and the little Bible and such. And he says, shoot, a fella could have a pretty good weekend in Vegas with that. Except when they made the film, and if you watch it, they had to dub over the word Vegas, because he said, shoot, a fella could have a pretty good weekend in Dallas with all that. The same city where Kennedy was assassinated. It is freaky that is the case. So they had to go back and re-edit the film, and that's how it ended up ending the way that it did, rather than with the preposterous pie fight at the end.
Wow.
So there you go, footy fans. We're not talking a bit about footy, but we're going to get back to it there. But there's a little history lesson for you about, one of the greatest films ever made in, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Absolutely love George C. Scott in that film. And if you're a heavy metal fan, you'll notice he's got his book, thermonuclear, like deaths in, like deaths in something like in Megadeths. So there's a reference to the band Megadeth way before the band was around. Because his binder says something about Megadeths on it. Yeah, so you got some Easter eggs to go back and look for there if you go back and watch that one again. Yeah,
good.
So back to your
screenplay,
guys.
Jack and I.
which we've not
Yeah.
we've now taken a slight detour there, but at least Zoom is working for us. Knock on wood.
That's true.
So you guys decided you're both movie fans, so you saw a bad footy movie, and off air you're gonna have to tell me which one it is because I want to watch it so I can see how bad it is. I'll have to find that one online so I can see how bad it is. I think it's one that might be on Amazon Prime here, but I'm not positive on that. So, Jack, did you have? I mean, you were a big enough movie buff when you weren't getting the Bond film spoiled that you decided that who came up with the idea first of all to say let's go ahead and write a screenplay? Was that you, Dan?
Yes, Dan had already written the screenplay or a brief synopsis, and had started drafting it. And we were on a trip over to Tasmania for a festival there. What's the festival called, Dan?
Well, this is the R. We'll give him the MA version. So it's called Dark Mofo.
That's right, Dark Mofo. And we had a very big night together, and I had to excuse myself from a nightclub, and he took me on a walk to get some fresh air. And we walked along the pier, Tassie, freezing cold, and found a park bench. And he ran me through his thought process on this idea for a film he had from start to finish. And that was where he got the ultimate buy-in from myself.
Okay, because it sounded like you. Okay, I won't go there because that could be that could certainly be in the MA version as well. There, that. So what kind of a time frame then from having crafted like the synopsis in terms of what you were going to do to actually having a fleshed out screenplay that you are ready to then say, okay, this looks pretty solid. We've got to maybe fill in a few things here and there, refine and polish a little bit as well.
Yeah, so this is going to give it away. The Australian film that came out that I watched was in 2013, and I basically started work on it then, and then put it in a drawer and forgot about it. And then it's one of those ideas that just kept percolating. It kept coming back. And after I finished playing footy, I was like, I love American sport films. I love Rudy, Any Given Sunday, Longest Yard, Blue Chips, Air Up There, Mighty Ducks, City Blues, all those old sort of films. But we don't really have any great Australian sports films. And it just drove me to want to do it. So after Jack and I had that conversation on the famed park bench, after needing a bit of a breather, we just started chatting over what was it, Messenger. We started chatting over Messenger and said, look, let's just get together every Thursday night for the next month and we'll just read through this script together and we'll just banter back and forth. And not unlike we're doing now, we went on many Dr. Strangelove, How I Learned to Love the Bomb tangents, but they ended up being the best parts about the story. It was really good.
Outstanding So now are you, in terms of the finished product, would you say it is finished in terms of being ready to, what's the next step? I guess I should ask that then. What's the next step as far as trying to get this in front of people?
Yeah, so screenplay's nearly locked off. What do you reckon, Jack? 99%? We just probably got to do one more run through, you reckon, yeah?
Yeah, just the one more run through. I reckon it's brilliant. It reads well. When we do the read through, we take different characters at different times, but we, as with George Lazenby, we've kind of identified some really old Australian classic actors to fill some of these roles, and a lot of real, Australian history drifts its way through the script, and it's kind of a love letter to Australia, not only Australian rules football, but Australia in general. So it was a real pleasure to I guess, contribute to Dan's brilliant idea. And we joke about the fact that he probably carried the baby to term, and then I'm just the foster parent that's come along and trying to.
That's a good way of putting it. That's a good way.
So certainly Dan's baby, but herein, it's about getting in front of people, stuff like this, getting some ears and getting in front of, ultimately the man we want to get this script in front of is Eric Bana.
Okay. Oh yeah, and he's a Saints supporter, so you know where he's going to be in about 6 hours. So I would just go camp outside the MCG with it. But and which means that you have a few hours left. You have a few hours to do one final rewrite. to add that one additional scene in that has that American podcaster who interviews Major. And I know one that would work for cheap. And I keep telling people, as Dan might have seen, and I've turned the camera off, but Jack, I have on the shelf above my desk here, I don't know if you noticed it there, but I have all that those empty Vegemite jars. But I would work for Vegemite. I would work for that. Okay. So I would work very cheap. Yeah. So if you need to have one additional scene where Major is wanting to talk, decides to talk to somebody or comes on a podcast to talk about the trials and tribulations of local footy and how he's going to overcome them, I could recommend somebody. Just saying. Okay.
Well, you bring us to probably one of our biggest dilemmas with this screenplay is we've filled it with Australian talent such as Eric Banner and John Jarrett and Jack Thompson. We've got all these roles written for these people. Obviously, they have to accept the role, and we've got backups for them if we need.
Have you got
but
Guy
the one
Pearce?
role that is really no, I haven't. He's actually one we didn't put in there. He's a St Kilda supporter too.
No, he is not. He's a Cat supporter.
Oh, he's a Cats. You're right.
He's a Cat supporter because
and Paul Kelly. Yeah,
I have reached out to his because I'm a huge fan of that show Jack Irish, as well, and which was all about Fitzroy. I don't know if you ever watched Jack Irish, but there was a lot of old time Fitzroy fans in that show. But I reached out to his management group back when the Cats were going to the grand final against Richmond and tried to get him on the podcast, and he was evidently filming something somewhere because they said he's not available right now. So I tried, but I'll try again.
Yeah, well, if we do end up getting this cast together, I'm sure we'll all be happy to have a chat to you again, Craig, because it's just the idea of the film too was one, to make a good film about Australian rules football, but also to celebrate the sport and spread it around the world. And I think that's kind of what got me onto your podcast. Is I was like, do Americans like AFL? And I was traveling through South America last year with my partner Chelsea, and we went to like a resort, and we're staying there with this guy who was about 6'5". He was huge, redhead fella. I can't remember what state he was from, but he told me that he played in this USA Australian rules football.
The USAFL? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Played in the ruck, ended up doing his anterior cruciate ligament playing the game, but absolutely loved it. And he's actually reached out to come over and visit and go and watch a game live as well. So there are people in America that do play this sport. And I was like, wow, we just need to, I think it was on your website, you said if we could tap into 1% of the American market.
Yes.
I can't remember the quote. What was it?
Yeah, well, I have said that if because we'll get, if we could get 1% of the American population interested in footy and watching the games, that's 10% of Australia's population. And if you get even 10% or 20% of those people buying international memberships for the clubs, think about the windfall that would be for the league. I mean, that would be a vast sum of money that would be coming in for the league that they could use for any number of different things. And and the league, we get the games on here. Now I have what's called the Watch AFL app. So I can sit down at my computer. I can, take stuff from my computer and send it off to my TV screen. So I can watch any of the games live or on demand going all the way back to 2017, AFL, AFLW, VFL, some Sandful and Waffle games, not too many of those, but you usually find those online. But then all the Fox Footy broadcasting. So AFL 360, on the couch, all of those kinds of things. I get all of those as well. Bounce, those types of things. I get to watch all of those shows as well. But and that runs me, through my international membership, I get that, and that ends up running me about $120 US. So it's like $150 Australian for the year. And that's part of my international membership.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So, we get the games on. We get a few games on like what you would call cable television, but if people who are listening to the podcast all the time they hear this all the time, and they know I'm preaching to the choir here. The network that carries them does nothing as far as advertising the games, because the games here, the Saints game tonight, Saints and Giants game, starts at 1:20, and then the second game tomorrow, Brisbane and Port Adelaide, is a 5:50 a.m. first bounce. I mean, I was up 2 nights ago for the D's and Collingwood game. That started at 5:20. I I mean, I got up at 4:45 that
game.
morning to go to work. So I watched the first half of that one at home. Then I went to work during halftime and watched the second half of the game in my classroom.
It's a tough time slot to promote.
Well, yeah, but it's even if you would say, hey, this is on, set your DVR. Record it on record it and watch it at a later date, because that's why I've worked so hard at trying to get the episodes like with Darren Bennett, and these people who are American fans and Australian NFL fans, to just try to say, what, this is an awesome game, and if an American sees it, they are intrigued, and then when they see some of the great action, they're like, holy cow, that's awesome. And you can find these people getting invested in it, and especially if they live on the West Coast, that 1:20 a.m. or 1:20 a.m. for me, St. Kilda game, that's coming on at 10:20 at night in basically west of Las Vegas. So San Francisco, LA, San Diego, it's a primetime game for them, basicly. Yeah, it's a primetime game for them. So it's the league, I think, could do themselves a great service if they could just convince the TV networks here, and it's through Fox Sports here, to just put an ad on that says, hey, this game's going to be on, because they never advertise the games. They never say this game's going to be on at such and such a time. Tune in for Collingwood and Melbourne. And I think also
I always put my conspiracy theory hat on, Craig, and think, is that influenced by some of your sports on shore? Just, hey, we'll chuck you this as long as you don't mention this other sport, because at the end of the day, everyone's competing for people's eyes.
Well, that's true. But, but in the time slots when these games are on,
true,
they're doing nothing more than showing, they're showing 20-year-old Texas Hold'em poker tournaments.
Yeah.
They're showing reruns of 15-year-old UFC fights.
Yeah.
So it's not like they have first run, live
right.
stuff that they're doing. Exactly. This is a live event that they're being able to show then, and that, if they just would, and I've also argued that if they, that like on a Wednesday night here, if they could do like a highlight, half an hour highlight / preview episode, where they spend, the first 15 minutes, showing some of the highlights of the games from the previous weekend. Show those speckies, show that dribble kick that went in from, 35 yards out, right on the, right down in the pocket, in, the Eddie Betts little corner there, that somebody happened to kick it through there, just like Eddie used to do. And then, spend the last 15 minutes, talking about, previewing, these games are going to be on this week, and you're going to be able to see, Patrick Cripps. You're going to be able to, you're going to see, in quotes with an asterisk, 2-time Brownlow medalist, Lockie Neal. There's my little shot at Carlton. But I actually have a sticker on my Redbubble page that is congratulating Lockie Neal for winning his second consecutive Brownlow medal, with a little asterisk that says actual results may vary. So I've had one person buy one. So but they just, if they just market,
Craig.
No, I know, if they just market the game, I think it would be an economic windfall for them. But again, we are not, and I have to keep reminding myself of this, because so many people here talk about, having the grand final played at a time so that the USAFL teams can hold like their fundraisers and get people to come watch the grand final at a bar and that sort of thing. And I tell them, I said, as much as that would be great, because the grand final is going to come on, here at, it'll be at like 1:00 in the morning, if I'm not mistaken. We're still not the target audience for that type of thing. So as much as we want to think that we are, we have to take off, we tend to get a little, stuck on ourselves. We're Americans, damn it, do what what's best for us. We have to sometimes, take that step back and realize that we're not who they're targeting this towards. But if they would just advertise some things here and there that could probably, make themselves a little bit more money, which would be, I think, a great thing for the league. And I think it would be great here. Because it's, I do think it's the greatest team game on the planet. I like it more than, gridiron football. And I've been watching, gridiron football for well over 50 years. And I'd rather sit down and watch North Melbourne play Fremantle than I'd rather watch, any other NFL team. I mean, not the Browns. I'm watching the Browns, but if it's the New York Jets and the Houston Texans, I'll take Fremantle and North Melbourne over that any day of the week, and twice on Sunday.
It's,
Okay. Yeah, go for it, Jack.
I was just going to say, look, you're preaching to the choir, and it's part of the reasoning behind this script from Dan's perspective, and getting my buy-in is the fact that it is the greatest sport on the planet, and we are in from the international audience yet, and so what a great opportunity here to really showcase the sport. Get a lot of showcasing around Australia's background, Australia's culture,
right,
and Australia's historical actors and actresses. There's globally.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's So have you thought about who you want to have play Major?
That was going to be my next question to you. I know you've had a chat to a lot of Americans who've come over and had a go at playing footy, and that some of them have entered into country league footy. So we're kind of throwing it out there. We've been talking about it, and they need to have some form of athletic skill just to be able to play the role. I would rather have someone who wasn't an actor that I could train up to be an actor than have someone who, couldn't play footy. It's really important to sell the sport, is to sell the skill involved.
You've already watched that movie.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. I feel bad because I actually know a couple of the people in that film, and I feel bad ragging on it. But it just really hurt my feelings, to be honest. As a person who played 300 plus games of country league footy, it was something. Yeah, but I think another thing that I don't think Americans know is that Australian rules football is slowly starting to die. A lot of country league teams are now folding, reserve teams, and a lot of the reason behind that is that kids are choosing to play sports that they can get readily on the TV that they look at as their heroes. So their heroes are no longer our AFL players, they're NFL players, they're the basketball players, and a lot of them, and this is what makes me the most sad, is because it's my most hated football game, is I shouldn't say hate, that's a strong word, but I really get bored watching soccer. And a lot of the kids here are starting to choose soccer over football. And it just makes me sad because it's the oldest codified football sport in the world. It's 8 years older than soccer,
Yeah, it's and when kids see the game, and they're like, when they see the games, because I'll have them during the season, I'll have games on, even because I'll be watching ones that I didn't watch live, because during the school year, especially because our school year ends at the end of May, beginning of June, so we're good. We got a good chunk of the start of the season where I'll have games on. And my first class of the day, I have kids that will sometimes show up 10 or 15 minutes early to watch a little bit of footy in my classroom. And it's been interesting, and and then when they realize when they see the shirt that I'm wearing, and they'll have the Cats logo on there, established 1859, and they're looking at it, does that say 1859 or 1959? I said, yeah, it says 1859. This team is 162, 163 years old now, 164 now, I guess, actually. It's and it's crazy, and
Any suggestions for who could play Major from the people you've talked to? We're thinking he's obviously a college graduate, so he's just finished. And so what's about 24, 20?
Well, I mean, the three people that I know, because the one that I shared the message with is Danny Marshall, who plays on Essendon's AFLW side. She's on their AFLW. She did not play round one, but so I'm sure she played the VFLW that weekend there. But she started out, she played 3 or 4 years with the Bulldogs before she got delisted by them and got picked up last year by Essendon and played, I think she played 9 of their 10 games last year for them as a defender. But she was a college soccer player here. I had her on the podcast. I've had her father on the podcast as well, telling the story of what it's like to have your child playing professional sport on the other side of the planet. and that was an interesting story in and of itself there. I mean, that, and I don't know, he's a really fascinating guy. He's a financial planner, really, really nice gentleman that I had the chance to talk with, and I still trade messages with him on LinkedIn quite a bit as well. The other two, and I've not heard back from Tyler, and he plays, at least he did play the last couple of years with the Vermont Eagles.
Okay.
I don't think he's checked his message on Instagram. I don't have his email address because when I contacted him for being on the podcast, it was through Instagram. And then the other one is a young man by the name of Rick Shaibani, who actually works in the TV and movie industry in Los Angeles, and he plays now for the LA Dragons in the USAFL. He still plays for them, but he played for he was at Caroline Springs for a year. He came over and played I think on the reserve side with Caroline Springs for a year, 2018 or 2019, right before COVID hit. He was there, and I had him on the pod. I mean, I talk to Rick all the time. In fact, when I started the podcast, I was on Twitter for like 6 months talking to people about starting a footy podcast, and just, how dumb an idea or how not dumb an idea it was for an American to do this. And he reached out to me. He was the first person to reach out to me to basically tell me, hey, go for it. So, and I trade messages with him at least once a week, and we'll do it through Messenger. We'll just leave little voice messages for one another on Messenger, but he's an absolutely wonderful young man. He's, like I said, he's worked a lot of, I don't think he's done the acting aspect of things, but he's done a lot of crew work on a lot of TV and movies. I know he directed one episode of a show that's on Amazon Prime. He directed one. It was, it's like he's probably late 20s, maybe.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Perfect age.
Yeah, late 20s. Yeah, but I can give you his Twitter handle. You can reach out to him if you want to, or even on Facebook if you want to. He's on Instagram as well. I follow him on all three of those, but and I think I probably have his email as well. But he's a great guy, knows the game, huge GWS supporter. Huge GWS.
Oh,
supporter.
maybe not then.
Well, it's there you go. But I mean, there's actually a young man that and I saw him play I need to look and see if he's still on the roster. Let's see here. I need to just check let's look by numbers here. He's going to be up in the higher numbers.
We're going to have to give you a casting credit now, Craig.
Well, I'll take it. But it's a young man. He played football at Michigan State. And I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but let me see, go back to 2022. But he played on a USAFL team. I went and saw them play. He played on the team from Nashville, Tennessee. And
I love that. That's what the guy in South America told me. He said that every state has a team.
Yeah, there's about 50 teams here in the US. There's about 50 teams, and I'm trying to where is he on here? He should be on here. And I'm not seeing his name. His name is escaping me right now, but he's like 6'6". He was playing in the ruck, but I watched this young man play, and he played in the NFL the last couple of years. He was on the practice squad for the New England Patriots for a year or two. And then I was pretty sure he was with Jacksonville, but I'm just trying to find his name off the top of my head, and I'll look for, I'll look for his name, but I watched him, up near the midfield stripe, taking a free kick and just dropping the ball like, he's dropping it out of an airplane or off the edge of a building right at the top of the key, right at the top of the goal square for, his teammate, to take an easy mark and kick an easy goal. He just was phenomenal. He was he was head and shoulders the best player out there. And then not long after I saw him, he got signed to the New England Patriots practice squad. So, and I'm trying to find his name here, and it's just absolutely escaping me right now.
That's okay.
But I'll look for his name.
What about players in Australia that have come across? Do you have any of those that we could hit up?
Well, I mean, you got all the young athletes who are here as punters that are playing collegiate football. You've got all kinds of punters that are playing here in the U.S. and I'd have to compile that list as well. But I mean, like I said, you've got probably 65 or 70 young men who grew up playing footy who are here punting collegiately, and there's another, 6 or 8 of them that are playing in the NFL right now, and a couple probably even up in the Canadian League, like Michael Dixon, for example, that's with Seattle.
The only problem with getting an Australian to play an American character is I've never heard a really good accent from an Australian.
It's going to need to be an American coming across here, I reckon.
Yeah. Now keep in mind, I'm not the one that brought that idea up. That was somebody else that brought that up. But so how do you get this? And I guess I don't. Is this the first screenplay that you've worked on?
So this is my 3rd film.
Okay.
Overall. I've done a bit of writing for TV and stuff like that. Being an English and drama teacher has sort of filled the bills in along the way, but this has always been the passion project. We sort of, with film in Australia, it's really hard to get a film made over here unless you have private financing. So we have all those contacts to go to. It's just about securing our main cast at the moment and finding someone like we've been talking about for the last couple of minutes to play Major, because it's such a key role in the film. I mean, not that the film would be anywhere near as successful as Crocodile Dundee was, but it's sort of in that same vein, that fish out of water story where someone from the States comes over and has this new experience. And I think learning the game, we could teach them through this film how to play the game. There's a beautiful video that the AFL produced I think it was about 8 years ago, called "What is AFL?" And any American asks me about, what's this game about, I just send them that link straight away. I say, watch this, because the American commentator and it's hilarious, and it just gives away all the great aspects of the game and how to play, and sort of gives you a little bit of an understanding, a bit of context.
Yeah, it is. I show that a lot. That video clip gets shown an awful lot in my class, and they've actually done an updated one where they've incorporated the AFLW in it. And I think it is it's Nat that does the AFL Daily with Damian Barrett that's narrating that one, I believe.
Yeah, I like the American voiceover one just because it'll suit the audience better. I mean, when Major, obviously at the start of the film, we're not giving away anything here because we know he gets over there, but what hooks him is the AFL Talent Scout sends him the link to that video and he watches it and goes, hang on. Because the reason we sort of came up with for him not wanting to play American football like his dad was the freedom to move and go where you want and not have to sort of follow orders. Because we get a lot of, we've tried NFL players to come over here, but because they're so used to following a set play or plan, the improvisation that our game requires is a little bit beyond them. Whereas basketball is sort of suits well. You just got to learn how to kick,
Yep. I just found that person's name, so I'm going to send that to you in an email here real quickly as we're talking here. I'm just sending
flick it through, but as Dan said, basketballers are the ones we're targeting for the leap as well. So Major's character has a massive leap on him, and to have that bigger leap in NFL probably be pretty rare. And his character as well starts out not being able to kick. So we think if we can target an American basketball player that can't kick and then take them along the journey in the film, that Dan and I could teach him to kick in a couple of weeks, but the fact he can't kick almost might be a boon in those early stages filming.
Well, do you want to tell Craig who we're sort of basing the character on, and if we could even get a shot at getting him to be in the film, Jack?
Well,
yeah, it's Mac McClung from the NBA. He's won the dunk contest last year, Craig. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the NBA. but his current team is the Orlando Magic, but he's 6'2". He's probably a bit too short. And it'd be great if we could get him, because his leap is perfect for the role.
Yeah, this young man, his name is Matt Sokol, Sokol, and he is 196 centimeters tall.
Whoa.
Yeah, he's like 6'5", 6'6". And he is I've watched him play, and I think he's a free agent right now. I don't think he's on anybody's roster, but he was, like I said, there were 4 teams at this little tournament down in our state capital that weekend, and he was one of the newest players, but he was still far and away the best player out of the probably 80 players that were there playing that day. Hands down the best player. And I actually know somebody else that I could reach out to, who is very much in tune with the game. This is an Australian gentleman that lives in the state of Georgia, who has started not one but 2 different USAFL teams in the state of Georgia, runs a business here in the U.S. selling footy jumpers and footy gear to the USAFL folks. It's called I think it's playaussie.com. I think it's
And what's his name? Sorry, Craig.
His name is Wayne Kraska, Kraska.
Kraska. Because he would be fantastic to talk to, because I'm assuming there'd be a lot of NBA type players who have that skill set. As Dan said, the freedom that's required of an AFL footballer really does align with NBA. A lot of our great players could have chosen to play chosen to pursue a career, should I say, in their NBA or just basketball in general, and then went down the path of playing AFL. Scott Pendlebury was a fantastic basketball player, but chose footy.
If I may stop you there, that's the first time I've ever heard that Scott Pendlebury played basketball.
Yeah, and it's the lateral movement, and as Dan said, the freedom required on the court, the thinking on the spot that really helps. And after you just learn to kick, that's the trick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the only American game where you have to play offense and defense at the same time. Everything else is just swap the team for another person to come on. That was the thing that annoyed me about American football, watching the 2 college games I did last year, is the amount of time that you just spend singing songs in the crowd and not doing much while they set up on the field for 10 minutes.
That's a good point. And that's one of the things that I love about footy. I mean, I'm blinded to that, having watched American football as long as I have. But that's one of the things that I find refreshing about footy, is it is so free flowing and it goes everywhere, and it doesn't necessarily stop. Now let me ask you this question. This may be a leading question based upon where I just am asking it from. If an American is watching the game for the first time, what do you think the first question is that they ask about watching the game? While I have you here, and I kind of gave you a bit of a hint. What is going on? Well, that's that is part of it.
What are the rules?
What are the rules? Yeah.
No, the question that I get asked all the time is what is with all of the whistles? That's the first question I get asked, is what is with all of the whistles?
What my wife said when she first, I should say ex-wife now, what she said when she first told me about the game, she says, "Why do they wear such short shorts?"
Well, so you'll watch. Let's be honest.
That's what they said. It was like having a bit of a show for the ladies at the same time. Sleeves, short shorts.
Well, I have tried that with my wife. Has no interest in footy. I mean, I even went so far as to, a couple of years ago, I found a couple of articles online that were done that were kind of like fluff pieces where, hey, the club is taking the day off from training at their home ground, and they headed to the beach. So at the time, it was Hawthorne heading to the beach to go train, and they're all in their budgie smugglers there. And there's Jaeger O'Meara at the beach, and I am comfortable enough in my manhood to say Jaeger O'Meara is one hell of a handsome guy. So I sent these links to my wife, and I'm thinking, you know what? This might move the needle and get her interested in watching. Nope, no interest at all. So she's never watched this. She, I tried to get her to watch, and she said, and I actually did something on the podcast where she said, well, I'll watch 1/4 of a game. She said, I'll watch one quarter, but I'll never watch again. And the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't want to do that. I said, I don't want it to be like this thing that's like punishment for you. I'd ask people, I said, well, what quarter would you recommend watching? And I had dozens of people give me feedback on what quarter of footy that we should watch. And the more I thought about it, I said, I don't want her to feel like this is something that she's being forced to do. If she's interested in watching it at some point in time down the road, so be it. If not, well, just more for me then. So it is what it is. So, since Dan, you are in Tasmania and you're not a Tasmanian native. So how did you end up in Tasmania, if I may ask you that?
Well, my dad is a Tasmanian native.
Okay.
Yeah, he was born here, and I think he left when he was about 3 years old. So it's always been a place we've come back to and visited. And because my current partner, Chelsea, is from Montana, she just loved the wilderness and loved walking around. We both do. We both love going on hikes and adventures. And Tasmania offers that at your doorstep. We're in Hobart, and if I drive for 10 minutes, I'm standing next to the tallest flowering tree in the world at I think it's 102 meters tall. So
wow,
it's a beautiful place. The only one that's bigger is the California redwood over in
California.
Yeah, of course, in California.
There's that geography degree playing part of things again. So look, I guess I have to ask you, how is it that you have a spouse from Montana?
Good question. Possibly, I would say, inspired by my uncle, who is married to an American. He lives in San Francisco. And just being a little bit, if I asked Chelsea now, she'd say you've got a thing for Americans, and maybe that's true. But when you meet someone that matches the same values as you and enjoys the same things, you can't help but get along. And I was just lucky enough that she had a fun American Montana accent that I really enjoyed as well.
So did you meet her there in Australia, or did you meet her in Montana?
Yeah, she'd been a nurse for 15 years in Australia, and I met her about 4 years ago now, three or 4 years ago now. Yeah.
Okay. And she was living in Tasmania at that point in time then. So you would
No, she was living in Melbourne. We moved to Tasmania together at the start of this year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so that's very cool. So is she then working still as a nurse now down there then, I would assume?
Yeah, she's working in the Royal Hobart Hospital down the road. So yeah, and it's beautiful. Hobart's such a small city. It's only about 200,000 people, and you can get anywhere in about 5 minutes in a car.
Okay.
The only thing you have to put up with is the short days of sunlight, and the fact that you could have like the other day I was at the top of Mount Wellington, which is the biggest mountain just behind me. It was snowing at the top, and I rode my bike down. As I got to the middle, it started to rain. By the time I got to the middle, the sun was out, and I was eating fish and chips on the waterfront. So
wow,
it's a crazy place to live. It's very and Tasmanian devils do not look like they do on Looney Tunes.
I know. and speaking of that, because that sounds like that's going to, that's going to be the push for the name of the new club. When the club comes in. And what have you bought your countdown calendar yet for 2027?
Well, I know you're gonna hate this, but I'm gonna drop my Geelong supportership and join the Tasmanian Devils.
I see nothing wrong with that. I mean, I completely understand that. That makes sense to me.
It's a bit controversial here at the moment because they want to build a new stadium instead of updating an old one, and they want to build it in a spot where there's not much infrastructure for cars to drive in and things like that. So they're kind of all grumbly about it at the moment. But
yeah,
a report just came out the other day saying that if they brought it in, the people that would come to Tasmania for events and the type of events they could hold in there, it would be 25 times, what it costs, what it would bring to the state. So hopefully they get a team. I think Tasmania deserves one. I mean, it's the oldest settlement in Australia. That's where we first settled down here in Port Arthur.
Okay. So let me ask you this as a follow-up, and this is for both of you. And so when the 19th license comes in 2027, it's just a natural progression that you're going to need an even number. So where does license number 20 go?
Maybe Northern Territory.
Oh, I don't know. There's not enough
Mm.
people in Darwin to sort of have a team up there. It's a little bit
It's
sort of
it's
boggy as
that,
well.
or we lose a team because it can't be uneven. I don't think anyone likes buys, so it might be Victoria loses a team, but yeah, who knows?
Okay.
I guess
Yeah.
you could probably give another team to South Australia, but I don't know.
Well,
It's a
yeah,
good question.
I know. I've I've had some people that have seen, because supposedly it was I think I've read where Townsville has already thrown their hat into the ring to say that they wanted to pursue a 20th side, and maybe, with them being as far north as they are, maybe the club gets split between them and Darwin, possibly.
Yeah, that might work. My wife's brother lives in Townsville, so shout out to Townsville. It's a fantastic area of the world up there, and I'd love a team up there because I go visit there a lot, and it's only rugby territory, so it'd make my life a bit more enjoyable.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And what about Canberra? Putting one in the ACT.
Oh, yeah, you got to visit Canberra and you'll know why they'll never have a team there.
Okay, okay. Well, I had a gentleman who I chat with quite a bit, who's a Giants supporter that lives there. He's one of the foundational members from the Giants, and as he says, sometimes they'll draw more fans in Canberra than they will at Giant Stadium.
It's true. That's true because of all the politicians being footy supporters, and Carrara
Yeah,
is a pretty good football as well too. But
yeah.
it's just more that town is just built for politics. It's like Washington, DC, I guess.
Well, that's yeah, and and I know that's where the final season of Rake took place, quite frankly. But
Yeah, I love that you've watched Rake. Richard Roxburgh is someone I considered for a part because we went with the really old school Australian actors that hadn't had roles for a long time
yeah.
that we wanted to see again. But yeah, Rake is an interesting show. He's a great character.
Well, I mean, or even the and I don't know the actor's name, but I think, and this is just me editorializing here, but I think, your hard-nosed local footy coach could be the gentleman that played, I think his character's name was Ray from Mr. In Between.
He's in it. No, okay. So we've picked, that's so funny that you said that because the main coaching role we've written specifically for Eric Banner, and being that the Ngambie Lakers are actually the St Kilda jumper, I thought that might entice him a little bit.
There you go.
Yeah, but no, the guy from Mr. In Between. I love that you've seen Mr. In Between. That is my favorite. It's like I call it Australia's Pulp Fiction TV series.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's actually going to play. Well, we've written the role of Daryl Keegan, the basically the antagonist in the story / bikey character who plays for the rival team for him.
Okay. Wow. So
We have
I guess that's pretty. I think I can safely say that maybe I'm immersing myself quite a bit in because in that, because I like I said, I watch a lot of Australian shows because we have a channel here, like streaming service called Acorn TV, which has a lot of British shows, but then it also has a lot of things out of New Zealand, a lot of things out of Australia as well. So I've watched the Moody's, the Moody's Christmas and that sort of thing. It's
such a good show.
And I don't know if you know this little bit of trivia, but the actor that played the lead, and this is where you may be able to get an in there. If you can get him, you might be able to get Narrowly Meadows, because that's her brother.
Narrowly Meadows. Which character are you talking about in the Moody's?
The young man, the normal brother, not the really eccentric brother, the one that's quasi normal.
So he wrote the show. He's actually been on different characters in Neighbours and stuff like that.
I've not seen Neighbours, but that's Narrowly Meadows' brother.
What's his name? Ian Meadows. That's right, Ian Meadows.
Yeah.
So
I had her on the podcast a couple of years ago because she went to college here for a while in the U.S. and love her. I love her podcast as well. So I wanted to ask you real quickly, are they dead set on naming the team the Devils? Is that if when the club comes that they're going to be the Devils? Because I have an alternative name.
Well, Okay, so yes, they are pretty set on the Devils. It has been coined, and it's been in the papers here to say that that's what it'll be. It's not official, but the other animal that we have down here that is very sort of iconic of Tasmania is the extinct animal, the Tasmanian tiger.
Right.
But they're also called a thylacine, I guess, they're sort of like a mammal tiger with stripes. It's a crazy animal that died out in the 1800s because it got hunted down.
Right.
So, but we've already got the tigers, the Richmond Tigers. So they can't be the Tasmanian Tigers, even though that's a really good alliterative name. They'll probably end up with the Tassie Devils. What's your alternative?
Okay. First of all, my jumper it's yellow. It's a yellow base jumper. The top of it kind of has like little ruffles across the top, similar to the swan feathers, if you will. They're supposed to represent the opera house. Now hear me out on this, okay? It's yellow at the top there. It's outlined with a little bit of black there, and the team's name is the Hobart Simpsons, and you got Bart Simpson's face on there. The Hobart.
Oh, that's hilarious. I'm going to make that fake jumper just for fun because that would be hilarious. That could be one of the teams in the film, the Hobart Simpsons.
Hobart Simpsons. There you go. So
it's classic because it's very similar to the Opera House. If you can just imagine
that's his hair.
The spikes of the hair. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So we've talked a lot about this screenplay, and it's fascinating. And I this is something, my son's a naval officer, but he has all these ideas for a screenplay, screenplay ideas and such, and he kind of tinkers around with in his spare time. But I have one that I want to talk to you about off air that I think is absolutely legitimate. That is one that I think you could maybe even get funded from elsewhere, because it's such a fascinating story, and it's about somebody that I've had on the podcast. But I'll talk to you about it off air. Because it's such a it is a really remarkable story that this guy did what he did. But want to talk about your podcast a little bit, the Teacher's Aid podcast, because you are a teacher by trade, and you've done a number of interviews with a gentleman by the name of Jim Poulter, and just some absolutely fascinating stories that he was beginning to tell. And one of the things that was at the early part of one of the episodes where he talked about how there was a lifespan of 179 years between he and his grandfather, which, is a long period of time. And first of all, what gave the idea then to start up the podcast itself? Because that's something that, only crazy people like I do. And you seem somewhat normal.
Yeah. It was, so I was the drama coordinator at Melbourne Grammar School in Victoria, and it's an all-boys school there. So I was sort of deciding, what am I going to do for a play for this year? I had the year 7s and 8s, and one of the boys actually came up to me and said, "Can we do a play about footy?" And I said, "Oh yeah, okay, we can try, but we'll probably have to write one. There's not many that exist other than I think it's called When the Big Men Fly is one of the only other plays." So I started doing a bit of research, and then I found out, oh, hang on, Australian rules footy's history is amazing. And not only that, the two schools that played in the very first game of Australian rules football was between the school I was working for and their rivals, Scotch College. So I did a little bit of research, and our Indigenous coordinator, Robbie Armat, who used to play for Collingwood and Sydney, he invited me to come along to the game, which is, I think it's the oldest sporting cup in the world now. It's called the Cogner Edelston Cup, and it's played between Melbourne Grammar School and Scotch College.
Okay.
We go to the game, and I'm watching this game, and then halfway through at the halftime break, because I think that's one thing that I love about Australian rules footy is you always get like a good break in the middle of the game. It's only 5 or so minutes at quarter time, but in the middle you get a big break. And this old guy who's 70, I think, how old's Jim now? I think he's 76. He goes out in the middle of the field, and he's got a microphone, and he starts talking about this Aboriginal game, Marngrook, and he pulls out the Marngrook, and he got, I think it was, what's the name of the player for Western Bulldogs, the Indigenous guy, plays in the forward line?
Buku Kamas?
Ugle-Hagan.
Yeah.
So Ugle-Hagan was playing for Scotch at that point in time, but he was only a youngster, and in the senior team was Cyril Rioli. So Those two were playing Marngrook on the oval with Jim Poulter, and he was talking and telling the whole story of sort of how it came to be and his family connection with it. And I'm watching it, I'm going, I'm starting to write a play about this. So I chased him across the oval, ran across the oval, and if you walk across the Scotch Oval, you nearly get shot because it's better than the MCG. If and when you come to Melbourne, see if you can sneak into Scotch College and see their oval because it is absolutely stunning. So I chased him across the oval, went to the back of his car and caught him, and he just started telling me these stories. He'd written 2 or 3 books about it, and I said, "Oh, this is great, Jim." And the more and more I spoke to him, the more and more I wanted to let people know all of these stories because he was actually the first person to suggest the connection between the two games, albeit into the theory that it has now become. So we just got to chatting, and then he invited me over to his house. We had a couple of coffees together and stuff, and I said, do you want to do a podcast, Jim? And he goes, I'd love to. So I put it all together last year, and it ended up being like a bit of a 5-hour journey. I don't know how far you are through it, but we tried to sort of talk about his family history, his true connection, and then go through the entire history of Australian rules football and its connection to Indigenous sport.
It's a fascinating from what I've heard so far, but what I thought was interesting, and I was going to share this with you, is that we kind of, he was talking about that length of time there, that 179 years, but we kind of have an interesting story like that here in the United States. The guy who was the 10th president of the United States, a guy by the name of John Tyler, he was born in 1790. So that is 233 years ago. He still has a living grandson today.
Wow.
Yeah. He has a living grandson today still. His grandson is 90, I think it's 94 right now, because his son, Tyler, the President Tyler's son, was born in 1853, and he fathered this guy who's now 94 when he was 75 years old.
Wow. So 75. Wow.
That's huge. Yeah. So
the knowledge that those people pass on to each other is amazing too. I mean, that's where Jim got his knowledge from,
Yeah, it's very, very cool that sort of thing. And that's one of the things as far as being teachers, that we get the opportunity to, to try to touch on that a little bit and learn from kids, and and hopefully that they learn a little bit about things from their parents. I mean, I have an assignment that my kids will be doing next week because none of them were alive when 9/11 happened. So they have to go and interview a family member who was alive during 9/11 to actually talk about it. Because I said, you've probably never spoken about 9/11 before with anybody. You're going to do that now. You're going to go learn a little bit about it, some firsthand knowledge from one of your family members about what was going on. And I had this happen, I did this assignment, a number of years ago, and it was a young man that I knew because his brother played on my baseball team that I was coaching, and I didn't realize it at the time, but his mom, who I knew, had been a flight attendant, and she was actually in the air somewhere across the United States when 9/11 was happening. When they're basically telling all the planes, get down on the, get to the ground as quick as you can, that type of thing. And I didn't know that until I read the interview that he had done with his mom, and it's like, holy cow. So, what made you want to become a teacher? Who inspired you? Was there somebody that gave you that bug to want to actually do this for a career?
I'll try and give you the shortened version of the story, but I know the exact moment.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a long story. I apologize if I'm waffling. Just cut me off. Feel free. Didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished high school. Mum saw a job in the paper for a teacher's aide, hence why I called my podcast Teacher's Aide.
Okay.
And got to the school. I was a 19-year-old, and they paired me with a kid who had ADD to the power of 10. I had to give him Ritalin every morning. It was one of the most horrible things I've ever had to do because I had to watch him turn into a zombie after I gave it to him.
Yeah.
So instead of giving it to him one day, I asked his mum, I said, can we just go for a run outside and have a kick of the footy, and let's just see if that calms him down instead of having to, medicate him. And it wasn't something I probably should have said as a 19-year-old, but I decided to do that, took him outside, and we would kick the footy and read a book together. And I taught him all of his lessons through this book that Gary Lyon wrote called Specky McGee. Anyway, about a month later, a young kid, right around the time of 9/11, had moved over from Iraq. He'd fled the country, and he'd been going to the local school that was there. I was at the Catholic school. He was at the state school.
Mm-hmm.
And he got transferred to the school, and he'd been bullied significantly by the kids over there about all of the 9/11 stuff, and they were really giving him a hard time. So even though he wasn't religious, his parents decided to send him to the Catholic school where I was. And I just sort of was given the job randomly, got called into the principal's office. Can you help this boy integrate into the classroom and get him to be friends with everyone? And I was like, I'm 19 years old. I don't know how to do this. So the only way I could really think about doing it was to get him to play sport. So I took my little ADD man out, and we would kick the footy together. And over the course of 3 weeks, I taught him how to play football with this other kid. They became good mates. A week later, a game of football was taking place between my school and, ironically, the school that he had just come from.
Oh, wow.
And it was a big match, and his entire family came down to watch the game. There were 20 of them. Wow. They were all refugees from Iraq. And I'm this 19-year-old kid sitting on a bench, sitting on the sidelines, coaching against this school that had just bullied him so badly. About 5 minutes into the second quarter, I decided, because he hadn't been there the whole time, so I had to start him on the bench. I said, all right, you start on the bench. Gave him an old pair of footy boots I had from when I was about 10 years old. And he goes onto the field, and I'm like, you got to kick it through the big sticks. And he's like, yeah, I understand big sticks. So he didn't really understand what would happen when he went out on the field. So because he was a soccer player, he just played on all the time. Yeah. So the ball got kicked out to him in the forward line. He bounced up over him. He jumped and grabbed it with one hand, turned around, run around 3 blokes, and kicked the goal.
Wow.
And 5 minutes later, same thing happened. He took a mark, didn't know what to do, played on, kicked another goal. And game went through. He got heaps of touches. He was doing a really good job. And in the last quarter, one of the other teammates, blokes from the other team, stood on his foot and he rolled his ankle and he couldn't finish the game.
Oh, man.
And he came off, sat on the boundary line. He was just running up and down going, I'm fine. But he was limping like he'd had a broken leg. It was pretty hardcore.
Oh, man.
Anyway, siren goes 5 minutes later. We've won the game by 3 points. Without his 2 goals, we never would have won. And I said to him, go and shake hands with every single player on the other team. That's what we do at the end, regardless of whether we win or lose, we shake hands. And I said, and, look them in the eye when you do it, because we won this game because you kicked those 2 goals today. And he did that, shook hands with all of them, and we're in the footy rooms, and he hadn't really had any friends until that point. And I walked into the rooms, and he's sitting in the corner, and every single kid from my grade is all standing around him, congratulating him and saying, well done, and sort of building his friends.
That is
and
awesome.
Then I get this is kind of the hardcore bit. I get this tap on the shoulder, and I turn around, and the scariest looking man I've ever seen in my life says, I need to talk to you for a minute. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was his dad. I didn't know this at the time. He takes me outside the rooms to the side and says, what you have done for my son is something that no one has ever done. I have not seen him happy since we have been in this country. And he started to cry, and he gave me a big hug. And I remember feeling this like shot of electricity up my spine saying, you should go and be a teacher. This feels too good to not do.
Wow.
And a week later, I applied to university, moved over to Bendigo, started playing footy in the Bendigo Footy League for South Bendigo, and finished my teaching degree. And that's why I chose to do it. Sorry if that was a bit long.
No, you know what? Jack, did you know that story?
I didn't. It wasn't long at all, mate. It's some good background.
Because I was going to say, if you knew that story and I had tried to stop him, I hope you would have jumped in and told me to shut the hell up so he could finish that, because that was, I've got goosebumps listening to that. That is absolutely, wow.
Yeah, I still have the photo of the team. I'll send you the photo over email. His name was, his converted name to Australia was Jack, but his last name was Masawi. Yeah, he was 10 years old. Yeah.
And that is, and now have you kept up with him at all? Do you know what Jack is, what he's doing now?
Postscript is not as good as the actual story.
Okay.
Postscript, he became a bit of a ladies' man at school.
Well, he might think it's a good story then.
Oh, from his perspective, he loved it. But he got in a little bit of a scuffle with one of the other boys because he liked that girl, and then Jack, because he was now the football star, was friends with her, and it led to its own version of the Bold and the Beautiful, but it was that was the initial spark that said
Wow.
this is a great career to choose.
And what about the young man that you were working with initially? How was he doing?
So he became the water boy for Rushworth Football Club, who I was playing for at the time. He chose to play football in the thirds. And so the thirds is like the under 18s competition.
Right.
And he ended up becoming a really good player. I ended up playing in the seniors with him about 6 years later. We were teammates, which was pretty cool.
Awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, that is a wow. And I'm glad I asked you about that, because I do ask that sort of thing. It's I think I asked that when I had Cole Hutchinson on, what inspired him to become a teacher, that type of thing as well. Because I have my story in terms of how I became one, and it's not nearly as insightful as yours was, and it is wonderful as yours was. But
I can still remember the feeling like what you said, you had goosebumps before. It was like that, but like to the power of 10. It was like this, I don't know, it was like an electric charge up my spine. I can still feel it when I talk about it. Yeah, it's weird.
Okay. So
Before,
go ahead, Jack.
What was that, Jack?
I was just saying it was a calling that you felt.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
This sounds like your
through footy though. Through footy of all things.
Yeah, this sounds like the next screenplay you should be working on.
That one I wrote into a short story. Actually, I've got that as a little short story collection. Yeah.
Okay, and the one I'm going to mention to you is somewhat similar to this, but it happened somewhere else.
Okay.
But I'll share, like I said, I'll share that with you, because it's something that if I had the know-how in terms of how to do it, I would try to write it myself. But I'm not to quote Forrest Gump, I'm not a very smart man. So let me.
But what love is, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I got married twice. Yes, got married twice. As we mentioned off air, Jack, I don't think you were there, but when I told Dan about how my students have met my first wife. House fell on her, legs rolled up, Dorothy got her shoes. So if you ever, and her little dog too.
Then he threw a bucket of water on her.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that was But I was dumb and naive at that point in time, and somebody tried to tell me something, because we had an outdoor wedding scheduled that day in the city park where we were living. It's not going to be anything terribly fancy. We got 3 inches of rain that day, so that'd be like 7 centimeters of rain that day. Somebody was trying to tell me something, and I didn't listen. Somebody tried to rain on my parade, and I decided, well, let's just go ahead and have the wedding where the reception is going to take place. But if I was to ask each one of you, what are the 3 films, since we're talking movies here, what are the 3 films that you think everyone should see?
Well,
you want first, Jack, or?
I might need some thinking time. I reckon The Castle is definitely one. As an Australian, I think that's the premier Australian film of all time. Eric Bana, obviously in it. One of the great classic comedies. And one of my favourite films of all time. Very, very watchable. But for the other 2, I might have a think.
Okay.
I go Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, and the first Mad Max movie.
Ooh.
So you threw an Australian one in there too.
Well, let's be honest. Technically, Mel Gibson was born in the U.S., but we kind of he had his issues here recently, where some folks may have said, yeah, we'll go ahead and let Australia keep him after some of the things that happened recently. But he's kind of been on a great redemption tour. But yeah, the original Mad Max is a great film, absolutely great.
I'd probably put Goodfellas in my top 3.
Okay.
Shawshank's an absolute cracker. I might have to agree with you there on that third there.
Yeah. What would yours be, Craig?
Ooh. I would say one, and this is just from me being an American, and I think it's just something that is a film that is the quintessential feel good about being an American film, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Okay. Yep.
Which is, that film came out in 1939, actually the same year as The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. Those are not my other two. I would, gosh,
it's a hard question, isn't it, Craig?
it is. I mean, I haven't thought about it from my angle. I'm always the one that asks the questions, not to answer them. Another one that I really love that is a very poignant one because The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, I think would be one.
Oh, yeah, okay. Good song too.
And I don't know if I would have a third off the top of my head right now. I don't.
You're not going to go with the classic American "It's a Wonderful Life" Christmas movie?
No, you know what? I'm going to go a few years later than that. I'm going to go with Psycho. Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I'm going to go Alfred Hitchcock there. So all three of them are black and white films.
They are.
Yeah. And
I've been saying Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, so I've jotted that down.
Yeah,
Frank Capra, he's the champ.
Yes. Then actually that was, like I said, it came out the same year as Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. It got nominated for, and I think it won for Best Story. So best screenplay, if you will.
That's one of those years where there are two great films in there and they can't all share the awards.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, plus you also had The Searchers, I think, was that year as well. I mean, I've read it because I show Mr. Smith Goes to Washington in my government class, and I have seen that film.
Still fighting for that lost cause, huh?
Yeah, well over 100 times. I've seen it well over 100 times, and I still get goosebumps when I watch it. But I have to talk 17-year-olds into investing 2 hours into an 84-year-old movie. So I look at lists that the IMDb and the American Film Institute have done where they have it ranked like in the top 35 movies of all time and like the greatest film heroes. Jefferson Smith's character, and it's Jimmy Stewart, same guy from It's a Wonderful Life. He's my favorite actor, far and away. You know what? I may take Psycho off that list. I'm going to take Psycho off the list, and I'm going to put Catch-22 on. I'm going to put Catch-22 on there instead. Absolutely love Catch-22.
I've never seen that.
Oh, it has one of the. It's a World War II movie, and Alan Arkin, who just recently passed away, to me it's one of his best roles.
It's a book. I know the book.
It's a book first, but it was a film where he's a bombardier on it, and they're in Italy during World War II, and there's a huge black market thing going on, and he's trying to prove that he's too crazy to fly because he's afraid to fly anymore. And Orson Welles is in it. I mean, it's a huge cast. It is a huge cast of characters. I mean, great actors in this one. But there's one scene where Orson Welles is like the commander of the base, and he's giving this inspirational speech where to all of the planes as they're getting ready to take off and go out on this mission, and they're getting ready to do, go out and do this and go out and do this. And I turned my camera back on for this because they're showing all of the flyers in the planes, after he's given the speech, and they're getting ready to take off, and the flyers are all saluting him. They're all saluting him. And Alan Arkin's character just goes, flips him off. It gives him the single finger salute. It's just a hilarious scene. It's just such a preposterous film, but it just is. I really enjoy that one. I love Psycho as well, but Catch-22 is a hilarious movie. So,
all right, it's on my list.
Okay, both Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and Catch-22. Looking forward to watching them, man. You're
outstanding.
A movie buff like us, so looking forward to it.
So, and before we wrap up here, so what is either the best or the worst advice that either one of you has been given?
Oh. All right, it's going to take
So I'll go with the best advice first. So this is my old man, absolutely stuck in my head, but everything in moderation.
Okay.
It was his advice: everything in moderation, regardless of what it is. And it's always stuck with me. And I guess that's why I'm into basically everything and and not super into just one thing.
Okay. So, Dan, what about you, sir?
Okay, mine's from a person I've never met, but that helped me a lot when I was a teenager, and it was a quote from Bruce Lee, of all people.
Wow. Okay.
And the quote says, "There is no help but self-help." And
Ooh.
it's really interesting because I find a lot of students that I have to say this to, because you can go see a psychologist, you can go and get people to help you, you can find all the people in the world to do things for you, but in the end, it's your decision to do the thing that you need to do that helps you.
Yep.
So unless you take that personal responsibility, you can't.
Yep.
You can't ever change. And so I think it's really important.
It's kind of like the basketball coach John Wooden's quote that I have up in my classroom, that and I have like 450 quotes up on the walls in my classroom.
Cool.
And his line is, if you don't have the, if you don't have the time to do it right, when will you have the time to do it over?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So, all right, guys, one last question for you before we close up here. And Dan, I think I might know your answer because you may have already told it to me. What is it that each of you is the most proud of in your lives?
Oh, I guess that moment from teaching is something I'm proud of, but it probably wouldn't be my proudest moment. I think my proudest moment it's another footy one. It's so funny. It's probably why we're writing all these footy stories. Is making the decision to move to a different football club within the same league, and choosing to dedicate myself to that and that group of players who I still talk to now, who ironically a lot of them live in Tasmania, and playing that season with them and winning the grand final at the end of the year, and spending a week camping together after that, really just enjoying our time. But it took so much dedication for everybody in that team, because we weren't the best team. We had to train to become the best team in that league. And I think I remember writing down what I wanted to do at the start of that year, and then reading it at the end of the year, and everything that I'd written down that I wanted to do had been fulfilled. And I just remember feeling really proud of that.
Well, it is like that quote from Kevin Durant that says, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Great quote.
You guys worked. Yeah. So how about you, Jack? What was yours?
Look, I've had a bit of time to think about it. I reckon mine would have to be marrying my wife. She's going to be listening to this. So
that's
Becky,
a very, very smart answer, sir. Very smart answer.
Bit of a loose cannon growing up. Always held a steady job, but certainly never thought about settling down. And she's been my anchor since meeting her. She's the smartest person in the room. I'm fascinated by her, and she continues to inspire me every day. Dan knows her well. I think I'm pretty proud of locking her down, because I think she's one of a kind, a diamond in the rough.
There you go. Yeah, and I guess I have to ask, is the right term to use? I guess you could maybe use the alternative. You anchor. Could it be like the hot air balloon that that provides you the lift that you need in your life? And again, anchor certainly works because they keep you anchored ground. I get it that works, but does anybody ever use it the opposite way and say that this is the person is like the wind beneath my wings? Exactly. Yeah.
I didn't need any of that, Craig. I needed someone to bring me.
He was already in the clouds. He needed an anchor to hold him on the ground, like a beautiful kite flying in the wind.
There you go. Okay, so guys, where can people find your work? And Dan, will Jack be a future guest on your podcast?
Yeah, we haven't really spoken about that, to be honest. I think we just kind of wanted to get the screenplay done. But yeah, we could definitely do that. I'm heading back to Melbourne in a couple of weeks. I'm staying with him down there, so that might be a good opportunity for me to ship the podcast gear over and do that. Yeah, but if you kind contact us about anything to do with the film, we do have a film company called Chaperone Films. It's DJABWURRUNG films@gmail.com. I am partnered with another person as well named Robbie Armat, who I was talking to you about before. He kicked, I think, goal of the year in 2001 in the AFL. If you look that up, you'll be able to find him. He has helped me with a lot of the Indigenous content within the story and helped sort of build his character in the middle. He's obviously signed on to play the character of Danny Parker in the story as well, who you would have read about. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And if you'll send me that link, because I tried starting to spell that as you were going along there, and I got lost in the middle. So if you'll email me that link.
It's actually an Indigenous word, and it came from him. So it's the name of the language mob that Tom Wills, the inventor of Australian rules football, the area that he lived in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that is one of the interviews that I have I've been working on, and I don't know, Ngara, if you're listening to this, I'm not calling you out on this because I know you've been extraordinarily busy, but I have been working for the last 3 years to try to do this interview. And it's somebody who I do communicate quite a bit with online, and I'm trying to set up an interview with her father and possibly her brother as well, because her brother is I can't think of Neil Lovett Murray that played with Essendon.
Nathan
Lovett Murray, does broadcasting on the Nears network from time to time, but their great grandfather is Sir Douglas Nicholls.
Yeah.
And, I've been trying to arrange, we've gotten yeses yet, but we've never been able to set up the time for me to sit down to talk with her father about his grandfather, which I really hope I can do that, have that conversation, because from everything that I have read about this gentleman, that he is in many ways, the way I've described it is he seems to be Australia's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That was a pretty handy footy player as well.
Yeah, he was a very handy footy player. He was amazing, actually. I mean, the Mungruk Indigenous round are named after him. So
right, yeah. But his great granddaughter is involved. She is involved in politics and holds office right now, I believe. So she's been very busy. So we've never been able to actually nail down the time. But I'll send her a note, usually like the last 3 years, like a month before the Sir Douglas Nicholls rounds, and say, just say I'm not bothering you, but is it a possibility that could happen this year? She said she'll reach out, and I'm not heard back, but she's a wonderful person. We've had some great conversations. She takes some beautiful photography of the area in the country where she lives, and I've actually used some of those as a background on my computer in my classroom, because they're just beautiful images that she's created and that she's shot there. So, but I'm hoping to be able to talk with him sometime in the near future. So, well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time so very much. This was a lot of fun. I know we had a few hiccups right at the beginning. I think we got it resolved. There were a couple little small instances where we kind of faded in or out, but I think in the great grand scheme of things, we're going to be all right.
Cool.
I am looking forward to hearing the great news that Eric Bana says absolutely.
So we do actually have a connection with Eric Bana in a sense. So my brother is the carpenter / tradesman for Molly Meldrum. I'm not sure whether you know Molly Meldrum, Craig.
I do not.
But he was Australia's foremost music extraordinaire across the late 80s, early 90s, and even still today. He's a household name in Australia, Molly Meldrum. And he is, I believe, St Kilda's #1 ticket holder. If not, he'd be right up there. So he's got the St Kilda connection. He knows everyone in the industry. So, so as we started writing this thing, we realised just how many little connections just kept cropping up in terms of our everyday lives, in terms of who we know and, who we might be able to talk to get this thing off the ground. So, really looking forward to getting a tight little package of this script together and getting it across to the right people and getting it financed and getting it off the ground. It's an amazing story.
Yeah, it is. It is an amazing story. And I look forward to hearing the great news when you make your next step and you get the positive results that you want, and then the positive results after that, until ultimately, I end up being an executive producer, since no, I'm kidding.
Plus the cameo,
Yeah,
Craig.
you know what? I'll tell you what. Yeah, I would like, these are only the 220 gram jars. Okay, I would love to have. I have actually seen a 5 kilo tub of Vegemite.
Yeah, we can get them.
If we can make that work. Now, shipping is going to be a little difficult, but if we can make that work, I would sign on. And you could just use audio, because again, I've already told you, I have what you would call a face for radio or podcasting. So that's why I only use the still images on my on my YouTube channel. So, but ladies and gentlemen, my guests have been Dan Bevan and Jack Van de Ven. Gentlemen, this has been an absolute delight. This has been a lot of laughs, a lot of fun. I love what you're doing with this. I wish you the absolute best of luck. And if you're listening and anyone who would also be a connection that might be helpful, please reach out to these gentlemen. I will get their website in the show notes, so you can take a look at that. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful project that they're looking to get accomplished, and I can't wait to see the results. And I do hope it comes to fruition, because this sounds like an awesome story.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks very much.
You bet, guys. You bet. And I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day, and enjoy the footy today. And I hope your wife enjoys the game up there in Melbourne today.
Go the Saints.
There you go.
We're looking forward to the next. We're looking forward to the next one, Craig, where we share the good news and ask you on.
Well, there you go. That'd be great. Yeah. But I'll be honest. I tipped the Giants to win today. So I tipped the Giants, and I actually tipped Port Adelaide to beat Brisbane up at the Gabba, even though they haven't lost at the Gabba all year. So
I know about that one.
Yeah, I know. I should mention before we wrap up, one of the big reasons I became a Cat supporter, there was one player back in 2016 and 2017 that actually drove me into the Cats camp. That
All solid?
No, it's somebody. Nobody ever thinks of this gentleman. Nobody ever. No, Nikaya Kakatu. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Nikaya Kakatu was watching him play. He reminded me, as I'm just starting to watch footy, I was still watching it through the lens of an NFL fan, and he was like a bull in a china shop, and was just the term that we use here when an NFL player or a college football player makes a really big hit and tackles a guy hard. They call it a decleater, because you basically took him off his cleats and put him on his butt. And I watched Kakatu do that 2 or 3 times in a game against Carleton, and it was like, that guy, that's the guy I want to watch. And then not long after that, he got like 4 years straight worth of soft tissue injuries and couldn't get on the ground. And now he's with Brisbane, and he's played, I think, 3 games in the last 2 years. He didn't get a game all year. So
I have the same story of my first AFL game. Dad took me to Essendon and Geelong. Gary Ablett kicked 8 goals, 4 in the last quarter, and 1 over his head to win the game.
Wow. That's how you became a Cat supporter?
Yeah, I was Carlton before that, because my great-grandfather played for Carlton. So, yeah.
Wait a minute. You had a family member that played for Carlton and you bailed on him?
No, yeah, sort of.
Okay. Just checking.
That's what I'm hearing, Craig.
Wow. And I'm guessing your great-grandfather is not with us anymore.
No. I do have his. It's so funny. My actual grandpa found all of his biography notes just as he was on his deathbed. He wrote a 50-page journal about sort of his life in through the Depression and stuff. It was really interesting to read, actually. Yeah,
that sounds like an interesting story.
It is, but for another podcast, my friend.
Yes, absolutely. But okay, guys. Well, have a fantastic day, and I hope you enjoy the footy. I'll be sleeping through the St. Kilda game, but I'll watch that one tomorrow sometime. But I hope you have a great day, guys. I appreciate it. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, Craig.
You bet. You bet. All right, guys, I want to thank both of you so very much, Dan, Jack, for sitting down. I love the concept of the screenplay. You know, I really think this could go somewhere. You know, we talked about a couple of names. Mr. Roxborough from Rake. Yeah, I absolutely love that show. I mean, he's everything as a human being that I have never and never will be. So it's almost like it's kind of fun to live my life through his vicariously. But again, I wouldn't want to have it because he had so many issues going on. But I really enjoyed that show. But and Jack Irish, also a wonderful one as well. But hopefully you have some success with getting this thing marketed, and can't wait to talk to you about it again. And like I told you, if you need a scene with an American podcaster talking with this young man, I'm your guy. And as I mentioned, I'll work for Vegemite and an executive producer role. Okay, I'm kidding about that. Okay, hey folks, remember you can find everything about the podcast over at my website, yankonthefooty.com. Get on the mailing list there, so when new episodes come out there in your inbox within about 10 minutes of when they're released, I send those out to you from my website, so you can click on any of the different podcast apps to allow you to listen to it there. Leave a review, okay? If you want to help out the podcast, you can click on that Buy Me a Coffee button in the bottom left-hand corner, or over on the right side. It's that little yellow button. Helps keep the lights on, helps keep the podcast up and running. Again, I'm a one-man band here. Running this thing all by myself. I do get a lot of help, with people coming on the podcast, but I'm doing all the work behind the scenes, and what promoting's getting done, it's all happening for me, while I'm also working my job as a teacher and all of the extracurricular things that I do after school. And my garden is an absolute wreck too. So again, hopefully you'll head over to my website and you'll get signed up over there. You can also reach me at Yank_on Twitter, or at a Yank on the Footy podcast on Facebook, or Yank on the Footy on Instagram. You can find Craig Wessels on Facebook. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well if you want to hook up over there. If you have an idea for a great guest, and I have a couple of irons in the fire. I've got one lined up for Tuesday night of next week that I've had to reschedule a couple times. This is the gentleman who's the marketing director for Major League Cricket here in the United States. Really looking forward to talking to him, because I have taken that deep dive into a shallow pool of water. Like they do at the circus. The guy climbs up the really tall pole and jumps into the little bucket of water there. Okay, I haven't done that yet, but I'm watching a hell of a lot of cricket, and I'm really enjoying it. I just love the three-dimensional, 360-degree aspect of the game, because you never know where the ball's going. And I'm starting to pick up on some of the nuances again with the T20. I was going to watch one of the one-day internationals, and I sat down and I was getting ready to turn it on, and I saw that I didn't want to watch just the highlights. I wanted to watch both teams batting, or both teams bowling, as the case may be. And the first one was about 3.5 hours long, and I did not. And I guess it's it's 50 overs if I'm not mistaken, right? So basically 2.5 times longer than the T20s. And I don't know if there are any changes in terms of how many balls are bowled in each over. I haven't watched one yet, so I'm not exactly sure. But really enjoying it. Like I said, folks, I do hope you'll consider sharing the podcast with your friends and family. If you want to leave a review, make sure you contact me as well, so I can get a sticker out to you. Because your word of mouth really helps me get the podcast in front of more people, because it gives me that street credibility, if you will. So, folks, check up on your friends, make sure they're okay. Reach out to them, go out and get that coffee. Tell them you love them. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. This has been episode 286 of A Yank on the Footy. Again, thanks for listening, everybody. I do hope you'll share the podcast with your friends and family. And until next time, goodbye.